Kia ora everyone, welcome back to our next edition of Econ Talks. Gareth, we've had a pretty exciting month of data, the latest labour market figures coming out showing strong activity as well. What's the latest?
Yeah, so the unemployment rate plunging from 4.7% to 4%, and this is sort of outcome that we wouldn't have expected previously. But the amount of tightening we're getting in that labour market, the amount of pressure that's coming through in terms of inflation, I mean, the economy is just really running ahead of itself. I mean, you delved quite deeply into some of those labour market numbers. What were some of the highlights that you picked out?
Yeah, what we're seeing is that general tightening across the economy. It's that we are seeing very strong employment. We saw that filled job numbers from the MEIs already sort of gave us that indication with the strongest monthly increase in 2.5 years in June. That flowed through very much into what we saw with the labour market release, an increase in employment, a fall, quite a steep fall, like you say, in unemployment, but also a fall in the not in labour force group. So we're drawing more and more people into the labour market. They're having to do a bit more work. Hours worked had increased as well. Across the board, we were seeing better activity. Just as importantly, we saw the underutilisation rate fall as well, again, very steeply from 12.2% to 10.5%. So people not only were getting into jobs, but if you had a job and you wanted to work more, you're being offered some more hours now, it seems. All of those indicators, plus what we saw prior, the difficulty of finding labour from the QSBO, job churn, high job ads, everything's adding to this incredible heat. I think we do have to take a step back for a moment and realise just how swift of a fall this was. It was the largest quarterly drop in 35 years since the survey has been going. And I mean, that just underscores the pressure, like you say, we've got in the economy, because we did see a significant drop. We were expecting, the market was expecting 4.4%. We were thinking that was a pretty good number. To fall to 4.0, really, really strong. The challenge as we go forward, from my point of view, is what are we going to do next? Because there's still not all that many people left that might be able to be deployed into work. We have no change in migration settings really coming forward to allow more people into the country. MIQ's at capacity essentially until December, and that means that the current heavy levels of activity that we're seeing are still going to be difficult to resource as we go through the rest of 2021.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the critical factors, is that demand conditions across the economy are still really strong. There's still people spending a lot of money. And so there's very little relief on the horizon for businesses in terms of that demand. And they're going to be, crying out for more staff to try and meet those pressures. It's probably early days at this stage to expect too much wage inflation to be coming through. I mean, anecdotally, we're hearing reports that businesses are having to pay more to attract and retain staff. There wasn't too much in a little bit of a pickup in the numbers, but not too much there in the official data to date.
Yeah, we did see a pickup, the LCI increasing 2.1% after a much softer sort of period since COVID hit. Of course, businesses not wanting to hand out pay rises last year because of the uncertainty. Now with that pressure back on, the reverse is coming through. Not only are you needing to pay more to keep your workers, but you're probably having to pay almost 2 times as much in some regards, because you've got to make up for last year's gap as well. When we looked at the unadjusted analytical LCI, we saw one of the fastest increases in quite a long time. So there's an underlying level of heat there, and we are likely to see that continue as we push forward. Certainly talking across to businesses across the country, we're hearing that real urgency of needing to find workers and the real difficulty that actually exists. I guess one of the challenges of paying people more is you can only pay more people more money if you can find those more people in the first place, and we're struggling. We've still got more job seekers than what we had pre-pandemic, so it's not as much a pure issue of numbers. We've got more people that we could press into work. The difficulty at the moment is trying to match up those skills and similar to make sure, and the locations, to ensure that we've got the people doing the right work in the right places for businesses across the country. But it is the most difficult period now in a long, long time for the labour market, generally for businesses at least, to get things going. As we move forward, though, that increase in wage pressure that we're likely to see coming forward, alongside all those other inflationary pressures, really do mean that the Reserve Bank, I think, has got to move the official cash rate later this month in August, because we've got, remembering, I guess, that there's 2 or 3 major points that the Reserve Bank's going to be looking at. One, where's that inflationary pressure going? Now, at the moment, it's already met and exceeded its target, and they'll be asking themselves how long that might continue. Second, they'll be looking at maximum sustainable employment. Well, at 4.0, I think we've blown through maximum sustainable. In fact, asking businesses, this ain't anywhere near sustainable. Thirdly, we've also got, those very strong demand pressures, and I don't think that's something that we can keep up indefinitely. We're bringing a lot of money forward from a few years' time into the here and now to spend it. The Reserve Bank is, I think, going to want to just limit back a little bit of the heat in the economy. Those labour market figures, just how strong they were coming in, probably cements their decision in my mind.
Yeah, and I think, look, we got interest rate rises penciled in throughout the rest of this year and through 2022. I guess the question now is just how quickly they come through. I mean, I know you're advocating for potentially a 50-point increase later this month. Not sure whether they'll go that quickly, given there's still concerns, obviously, around COVID, the Delta variant and some of that stuff. But, gee, domestically, the economy is running hot. And I mean, look, even if we push the official cash rate back up to 1.75% by the end of next year, it's still only, what you would have thought was incredibly stimulatory before COVID came along. So we're not talking about a massive tightening in monetary conditions as such. It's just moving back to something a bit more normal. And it's clear that we've had so much stimulus for the economy over the last 18 months, both from monetary policy and fiscal policy, and there's no need for that to continue now.
Absolutely, and I think from my point of view, that sort of more rapid increase right now, and then maybe a bit of a breathing period for the rest of this year, at least for a few months, gives the Reserve Bank time to assess better how long-term that inflationary risk is likely to persist, and also see how that Delta variant starts to move the global economic picture. Because I think we've got to be realistic as well that New Zealand raising our rates by 150 basis points or so over the next few years, when the rest of the world's central banks are saying, mate, we're not moving anytime soon, would put us a bit out of kilter. But you're right that we are essentially overstimulating the economy. We don't need to move it completely back to normal. We still need support in the economy. It's just we need to go from having super stimulatory conditions to very stimulatory conditions. And I guess weaning the country off the morphine more onto the Panadol. We need pain relief. It's just not quite as hardcore as it used to be. At the moment, those demand conditions are just as important to the economic picture as those sort of supply chain restrictions and the skill shortages that we see in the economy. So part of it is really just taking a bit of the heat out. We're still going to have a fire lit underneath us, but we're not going to have quite as much petrol being poured on month by month. That OCR change could well be coupled with a change to the FLIP as well, the funding for lending program. I think everything's on the table for the Reserve Bank. The timing is probably the hardest thing to pick at the moment. But we'll assess where that timing goes, what decisions the Reserve Bank makes, and where interest rates will head on one of our future editions of Econ Talks.